90 at the Thompson Road service ramp. Be a couple people involved, possibly somebody laying in the ditch. 2 cars involved.
A tragic accident in Syracuse being felt across central New York and beyond. A 51-year-old man walking on the highway struck and killed.
Here we got 1 down and medium, not bleeding, not conscious.
Behind the wheel, a pillar of the community, Coach Jim Boeheim.
Mr. Boeheim did exactly what we would expect him to do. He stopped.
The community devastated.
He always was really friendly guy with everybody who was close to him. He used to laugh.
The energy dampened leading up to the big rival game against Duke as 2 Syracuse families are heartbroken tonight.
Good evening, I'm Matt Mulcahy.
And I'm Megan Coleman. Tonight, an investigation is unfolding after Coach Jim Boeheim is involved in a deadly crash on 690. And ESPN's College Game Day just canceled moments ago, come Saturday night in light of this tragedy.
Right now, Coach Boeheim is not facing any charges. Alcohol and drugs were not a factor. The community is reeling, though, from this tremendous loss of a man named Jorge Jimenez.
Tonight, we are getting our first look at the victim of last night's crash. His name is Jorge Jimenez, 51 years old, originally from Cuba, although he'd been living in the Syracuse community for 20 years. This photo was sent to us by Brian Hernandez, who says Jimenez is his stepfather. He's remembered as a sincere and caring person with 3 sons and a daughter.
Now, this happened just before 11:30 last night on 690 East, just before the Thompson Road exit. A couple of hours after the SU-Louisville game at the Dome, investigators say the initial car lost control, hit a guardrail, it spun out, it was left in the middle of the road. Several people in that car got out and walked out onto the edge of the highway trying to get to safety. That's when police say Coach Boeheim, trying to avoid that crashed car in the center, hit Jimenez, who was on that left side of the road. Jimenez was rushed to Upstate Hospital, where he later died. Coach Boeheim put this statement out earlier today, saying he's heartbroken and extends his deepest sympathies to the Jimenez family.
This tragedy is now making national and international headlines, from ESPN to CNN and many more.
We have extensive team coverage of this crash for you tonight. Our Mary Keeler has the latest on the investigation. Sports director Nico Tamurian joins us in studio with what's next when it comes for the coach in SU basketball.
Dan Bassidio is tracking Coach Boeheim's whereabouts before the deadly crash. And our chief meteorologist, Wayne Mahar, takes a look at the weather conditions, where they were last night, and if they may have played a factor in the crash.
We begin with Mary Keeler live in downtown Syracuse, where a news conference with the police chief and the district attorney wrapped up just about a half hour ago. Mary?
That's right. And we really got a sense of the heavy hearts of both the Syracuse police chief and Onondaga County District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick, as this has been no doubt a tumultuous, really 24 hours almost since this fatal accident. And we're learning that the victim in this is 51-year-old Jorge Jimenez, who we know was in a vehicle that was kind of perpendicular to the road in oncoming traffic in a black car. It was a black car when Jim Boeheim tried to avoid it and basically couldn't avoid it, which ultimately led to Jimenez's death. And one thing that is going to be a major factor in the reconstruction of what happened here, I asked a specific question about speed, about how fast Jim Boeheim was traveling in his car, what kind of car, and it was a GMC Arcadia. The traffic division Sergeant Brown told me, and speed is going to be a factor that they're going to look into. But at this time, again, there's no grounds for losing a license, and both the driver of the vehicle Jimenez was in and Jim Boeheim are cooperating fully. But really, the DA also said he didn't feel it was appropriate to talk to Jim Boeheim directly. He's only been speaking about him through his lawyer, who just really wants to make it known that he was trying to do everything he could once this terrible situation happened to prevent a further crash from happening, using his cell phone light to make sure other cars saw that there was something going on in the middle of the road. And it was dark out, it was slick, and just an all-around horrific situation, as has been echoed by the DA and the police chief. Live in Syracuse, I'm Mary Keeler.
And no indication, Mary, that alcohol was a factor in any of this.
No indication of that. And the DA said he has seen and heard rumors of people wondering, what actually happened. And we have confirmed several times and heard several times from Chief Kenton Buckner that field sobriety tests were performed right there at the scene. They interviewed Jim Boeheim at the scene, and those tests all came back negative. And his lawyer said, and the DA said, to know him is to know that he would not be one to drink.
Thank you, Mary Keeler, live downtown tonight.
Well, tonight, the entire Syracuse community is devastated. In a statement, Chancellor Kent Syverud says he's deeply saddened by the news that Boeheim is, quote, understandably heartbroken by the loss of life.
As dozens of students camp out outside the Dome getting ready for the game Saturday night in Boeheim-Berg, they're hoping to get the best seats up front, but they woke up this morning hearing this news about Coach Boeheim, and they're wondering what that atmosphere for the game will now be like. Well, our sports director, Nico Tamurian, joins us in studio with what we know so far. And Nico, last night it seemed like the game would be here any second now. Now, 2 days seems like such a long time away.
Well, Matt, it's certainly proof that life can absolutely change in an instant. We do have new information, actually new from when I last spoke with you guys at about 5:30. For starters, we know Jim Boeheim met with his team today. Before, we were unsure. Syracuse would not confirm or deny practice. Now, Jim Boeheim did not participate or attend practice, but he did meet with his team. I know you've already relayed that information. We also know that ESPN is officially no longer holding the game day festivities. And what I mean by that is the 11 a.m. broadcast from the Carrier Dome, all the hoopla with the students in the sign. We've seen it. In fact, we saw it 5 years ago when Syracuse played Duke for the first time when they joined the ACC. On that note, ESPN with a statement tonight saying, quote, due to the recent tragedy and after careful consideration due to the celebratory nature of the show, and that's what I was really wondering about, ESPN's College Game Day will originate from ESPN headquarters in Bristol, Connecticut this weekend instead of Syracuse University. We spoke with school's officials and they understand the decision. And that's one of the first things I was wondering about, obviously with something as tragic as this. And the game is still on. Let's make no mistake about that. Yeah. It's just the pregame hoopla and festivities, which really does absolutely seem inappropriate right now after everything that's happened. Obviously, as we mentioned, the game is still on. Whether or not Coach Boeheim coaches it is another issue. That's something he's probably weighing right now. If he is unable or unwilling to, Adrian Autry would take his spot on Saturday
That's
night.
one challenge that he's got to face, and the university will have to make that decision in the next 48 hours.
That's just really a mental state, I think, for Coach, and something really life-changing, something he's going to carry with him forever. Could be almost therapeutic to be back in front of the Carrier Dome and something he's so passionate about, but we have to wait and see.
Yeah. All right, Nico, thank you so much. Well, right now, our Dan Messinio is breaking down the timeline from the big win against Louisville to this tragic accident.
Joey's is one of Jim Boeheim's go-to restaurants. He was here last night and left just minutes before the crash that tragically killed one person. Joey's general manager tells me that Jim and his wife Julie, along with a few others, showed up for a late dinner around 9:45. He says Jim was in good spirits, just coming off the win over Louisville. Boeheim dines downstairs here at Joey's for more privacy. They were here for around an hour, leaving around 10:45. Police say less than an hour later, Boeheim hit Jorge Jimenez. The manager tells me Boeheim is a great guy and customer who has been eating at Joey's for years. The employees I spoke to here at Joey's say that the crash is a tragedy and they're still stunned by what happened. Reporting in Syracuse, I'm Dan Messinio.
Well, what role did weather perhaps play in this? Tonight, Police Chief Buckner says there were icy conditions that may have contributed to that initial accident.
I believe that the weather and the conditions there played some role in that. Obviously, that's a part of the analysis that we will do. That's part of our reconstruction. That information will be provided later.
The police chief telling reporters earlier today that car that Jimenez was in may have hit a patch of ice before slamming into that guardrail. Let's go to Wayne. He's in the Weather Center. And Wayne, we know that you were monitoring the conditions as you do every night. What was going on at that time?
We had 2 or 3 hours of a light freezing rain, light freezing drizzle. I was out on the weather deck during the evening watching this. 11 o'clock out on the weather deck doing the weather. We had a little glaze of ice on the deck. 11 o'clock temperature officially was 32 degrees. And then it was slowly rising up to 35 degrees at midnight, but the temperature during the evening had been down to around 26, so down to the mid-20s. The ground was was certainly cold. So even at midnight, as the air temperature was up to 34, 35, I'm certain that the ground was still cold enough. There were probably still, likely, in fact, some patches of ice around here and there. Just a bad situation all in all. At just a critical time, too, when you're dealing with temperatures rising slowly through that freezing mark, and you've got a steady light freezing rain and light freezing drizzle falling. So not good at all.
All right, Wayne, thank you.
Wayne. We appreciate
I can
that.
say from my own experience leaving here tonight, our parking lot was a bit icy.
Last night, yeah.
Last night, rather.
Right.
The parking lot was a bit icy, and so I was a little timid, I would say, driving home, wondering if there would be any ice on the road.
And when we get off the air at 11:30, 11:35, that's just a few minutes after Coach Boeheim went down 690, and
we both came across that crash.
Yeah, we both came across the crash, and you can't help realize, but truly, with the grace of God, it could have been another driver, anyone that could have been the one who hit Mr. Jimenez in those conditions last night if the timing just goes a certain way. So much more to come here tonight.
There certainly is. Coming up on NBC3 News at 6, our breaking news coverage continues. We sit down with Onondaga County District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick. He's live in studio tonight.
Plus, we continue with our coverage after our newscast tonight. We have a special report coming up on NBC3 at 7 o'clock tonight. We'll see you then. We continue to follow breaking news tonight. More on the Syracuse community reeling after the deadly crash last night on 690. The victim, we want to keep bringing up his name, 51-year-old Jorge Jimenez, dead after being struck on 690.
And behind the wheel of the car, the pillar of our community, Coach Jim Boeheim. Breaking now, Onondaga County District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick joins us in studio. And this just appears, you said at the press conference a moment ago, to be a terrible accident.
It appears that way, Megan. This is literally something that could have happened to anybody. It could have been a lot worse. You know, if the people were still in the car and Coach hadn't reacted as quickly and smashed into the car, he might have killed himself. Might have killed all four of the people. He did, I think, what instinct would lead you to do. You're coming down this dark section of road. Your only illumination is your headlights. He probably doesn't have his high beams on. And he can go right, but he doesn't have time enough to determine whether or not there's traffic. So he does what we normally do to pass.
Pass to the left.
He makes on the left. He can't see these people. And then the guy walks in front of him, poor Mr. Jimenez, and gets killed. And I pray to God, I think he died instantly.
Walk us through what you can tell us what's happened behind the scenes, particularly involving Coach Boeheim. You said in the news conference you spoke with his attorney.
Right.
Why the attorney instead of the coach?
I didn't think everybody knows that Coach and I are friends, and I didn't think it would be appropriate to him and his family to have me chatting with the person who was driving the other car. He knows I'm thinking about him. His lawyer, who's also one of his closest friends in the world, communicated to me what Jimmy is thinking, which is, I'm heartbroken. I wish to God that you could somehow magically turn that clock back, you know, and just, okay, I hit the brakes, put his blinkers on. But here's the mindset of this guy. He knows something terrible has happened, but what's he think of initially? First about the guy that he hit, and then he goes with his cell phone to ward off other drivers so they don't have the same result that he had. And the police confirmed that when they got there, they saw Coach on the side of the road flagging them down because they had trouble seeing this car initially.
That's pretty remarkable.
We know there's no charges coming, or at least you don't anticipate that, but you did mention the DMV hearing. Does this mean Coach Boeheim might have a license that he can't use for a while?
This is mandatory, Matt. Anytime there is a vehicular fatality in the state of New York, by law, the DMV must hold a hearing. I don't want to presuppose that. I would be shocked if his license was in any way rescinded or restricted based on what happened.
And for those who did not get a chance to see that news conference at 5 o'clock tonight, no indication of any alcohol use, nothing with distracted driving or texting or anything like that.
No texting.
The weather, it appears, may have been a factor.
Right. The road was not in the best of shape. The initial driver, Mr. Canones, indicated that he had a patch of ice, which has caused the initial accident. But it's unfortunate. I cherish our local news because you guys care about facts. National people, in their desire to be first and have the inside scoop, were speculating all over the airwaves this morning that Coach had been drinking. That would have taken about 30 seconds of research to find out he doesn't drink.
Right, he's a Diet Coke guy.
Yeah, and the second thing I see is a guy stating as a fact that he fled the scene.
Yeah.
And you know, those people, they ought to be on the air tomorrow apologizing, not only to Coach, but to him and his family and the Syracuse community.
That's why we want to have you here tonight. We appreciate you stopping
thanks,
and
Matt.
make sure we get it straight.
Thank you for being here.
Okay.
Thank you, District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick. Fans are reacting to this tonight, too. Sad about the news, feeling a lot of empathy for Coach Boeheim and, of course, Mr. Jimenez as well.
Let's go live to our Tommy Sladak. He's at the Press Room Pub tonight. Tommy.
Yeah, Matt and Megan, fans say they're trying to look ahead to Saturday's game, but they're really just having a hard time, and it's impossible to ignore last night's fatal accident.
We continue to follow breaking news tonight. An investigation unfolding into the crash that happened on 690 last night involving Coach Jim Boeheim.
ESPN's College Game Day canceled come Saturday night in light of the tragedy.
We go breaking live now to Tommy Sladak. He's down at the Press Room Pub getting reaction from Syracuse fans with a sense of empathy for the coach and all involved in this crash. Tommy?
Matt and Megan, fans say they're doing their best to look ahead to Saturday's game against Duke, but just say it's impossible to ignore last night's fatal accident involving the coach they root for so dearly. Now, ESPN's College Game Day bus is camped outside the bar where fans are taking advantage of checking out the inside. However, ESPN has confirmed within the last half hour they are pulling their show that set to film at the Dome on Saturday. People say they are bummed, but many still repping orange tonight. Fans say they predict the Central New York community will come together to do something special for both families involved on Saturday.
This is not a very big city, and anytime something like this happens, your heart breaks.
Do you think the community is really going to kind of come
I
together?
hope so, and I hope maybe they can do some kind of remembrance or something at the game, and it's just terrible.
I know and I believe that the community will come together around everybody that's involved, and I think everybody this weekend will, you'll see that when, if you are at the Dome or watching. So.
And until news of the deadly crash broke this morning, these fans were still riding high off last night's win over nationally ranked Louisville. Coming up, we'll be talking with more fans to hear their thoughts on whether or not Coach Boeheim chooses to coach on Saturday against Duke. Reporting live at Press Room Pub in downtown Syracuse, I'm Tommy Sladak.
Thank you, Tommy. Good to hear from the fans tonight, and certainly everybody feeling this one. The more we talk to people, the more we see it repeated.
Well, next is sports. In the aftermath of this tragic car accident involving Coach Boeheim, some fans are wondering what it means for Saturday's game against Duke.
Sports Director Nico Tamurian with the latest information when we come back.
Sports brought to you by Syracuse Crunch, celebrating their 25th season.
It's a tragic day in Central New York. Good evening, I'm Nico Tamurian. On a night where two families are grieving, it just does not seem right to dive into the world of sports, X's and O's of that game with Duke Saturday. The family of Jorge Jimenez mourning, the Boeheim family, of course, with deep sympathy, in shock after an accident that truly, really could have happened to anyone. Now, the police report from Syracuse PD saying Jim Boeheim saw a car that was in an accident already. He avoided it by swerving to the left, and by doing so, his SUV did hit Jorge Jimenez, who was outside of the vehicle in the first accident trying to help people to safety. It truly is an accident, a tragedy, and it just so happens to involve the most famous person in Central New York, someone who has given this area more on and off the court. Now, I'm told today Boeheim met with his team briefly. He did not attend practice. He did not participate in it. He's, quote, heartbroken. And many of you are asking, so we're answering tonight. ESPN's Game Day broadcast is canceled. This is the scene of what it looked like when they were here 5 years ago. So what I mean by this, the live show that ESPN would have done from the Dome at 11 a.m. with fans packing the floor, as you see there, that's no longer happening. ESPN will host that show from their headquarters in Connecticut. The game itself still on. Unclear yet if Boeheim will coach or not. And obviously, it appears completely and utterly up to him after such a tragedy, how he feels right now. If he does not coach, associate head coach Adrian Autry would lead the Orange for that game against the Duke Blue Devils. Now, after everything that happened today, it is worth remembering everything that Coach Boeheim has done with his Jim and Julie Boeheim Foundation alongside his wife Julie, and how much they help local charities in Central New York. It was last year I asked him about his charity help to the Boys and Girls Club of Syracuse.
To me, it's an important thing in the city, the most important thing in the city. I don't think we're getting enough support to them. That's why Julie and I decided to really dedicate our foundation to raise money. And we've had great partners, you know, Kraus-Heinz, National Grid, a whole bunch of people have really helped us to fix and update the Boys and Girls Club. It's a great organization. They take care of the kids in our city, and we just have to do more. We have to get more people involved. Our foundation is helping. We're getting people to help us, but we need more people to help. This is the future of Syracuse. You want to know how you fix crime in Syracuse? You help the Boys and Girls Clubs. You get those kids started on the right path.
You know, so often people see Jim Boeheim in game mode, post-game press conferences, yelling at officials maybe. That's the real Jim Boeheim, and I think it's shown in the press conference when they said even after the accident he was flagging people down with his cell phone, trying to avoid the accident or get more help. That's the real Jim Boeheim.
We want to remind people that we have continuing coverage of this about the crash tragedy on 690 tonight at 7 o'clock. We'll see Nightly News next and be right back here at 7 on NBC3.
Yeah, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Megan Coleman.
I'm Matt Mulcahy. We'll see you in about a half hour.